in general, Solana is like the only place where mobile is like a part of the conversation, like a significant part of the conversation, and like a proactive part of the conversation. Obviously, what Solana Mobile is doing and continuing to do.
Hello, everyone. GM. Welcome to another episode of the Solfate podcast, where we talk with builders and founders in the Solana ecosystem. And today, that's exactly what we had. We had Creative Drewy, as he's known on Twitter, in the Twitter sphere. But Andrew, he is the only mobile developer at DRiP. I think they have a second mobile developer now. Used to be at Solana Mobile. But we talked about mobile development, and basically James and Andrew got real nerdy about mobile development, their woes, their tech stack, and how the DRiP mobile app is built.
Yeah, I don't know how often we talk about this on the show. I started my development journey as an iOS developer, so we definitely nerded out big time in this episode. I will say for the listeners, this is one of the more technical ones. I think it's worth it even if you're not a developer, right? Like if you're a product person, if you're a CEO, if you aspire to be any of these things, like it is incredibly helpful to sort of know the developer perspective on things. One of the things that we all talk about is sort of the pros and cons of cross-platform tooling versus building natively. We talked about some of the tools that are sort of in between, right? So like the way that Andrew is building the DRiP app is basically, a way to write the app once, but it compiles down natively so that it's more performant. It was really, really cool. It was actually very informative for me. Before we jump into the episode though, quick shout out to Phantom. We love partnering with Phantom. They are the preferred wallet of the Solana ecosystem. And I'm always going to plug Unboxed. If you have any, development needs, reach out. Happy to help. With that, I think we should jump into the show, Nick.
Yeah, let's go. Nothing in this podcast is or should be considered financial advice. Any opinions and thoughts expressed are solely those of the individual. They do not represent the opinions of any entity. Enjoy.
Well, I've been excited to have this conversation, and as like a mobile developer myself, it's always fun to chat with people working on mobile things. I know we are maybe different types of mobile developers. I'm like a diehard native iOS dev.
Hey, I am with you, brother. Okay. So yes, I mean,
what is your definition of native here?
Well,
I'm talking like Objective-C or Swift. Like it's like first party language, first party framework.
Well, we can get into that. In theory, or in an ideal world, I'm actually 100% on your side.
Okay.
But I'm also somewhat pragmatic.
Fair enough.
I try to be pragmatic, and so let's say as close to native binaries as you can get. How's that?
Okay.
That's a good way to phrase it.
I'm here for that. I also appreciate the pragmatism, right? Yeah. Like I run a dev shop. We've got to do what makes the most sense for our clients, and often that is some cross-platform tooling, so that because they're just looking for reach. I don't usually think it ends up in the absolute best apps, but 80-20 rule type of approach, right? And it totally depends on what you're optimizing for. So I'm not going to get overly dogmatic about it.
If it were up to me, when Vib hired me, I would have said, let's hire an iOS dev too, right? And co-develop both apps at the same time, native Android, native iOS, right? Because I am 100%. I believe that is the best option. But.
Well, for the listeners, in case any of the listeners haven't used the DRiP app, the DRiP app is phenomenal. This is not like this is not a knock on that at all. Yeah. I'm wildly impressed with what you've put together. I'm thrilled to talk about it.
Yes.
Right? So let's start the conversation there with like I'm arguing over like the last couple percent of. I don't know. Some of it's even just developer experience because I'm familiar with, first party Apple stuff because that's the world I come from. Some of it isn't even me making an argument against like the app itself. Right. But the DRiP app is awesome. I am so thrilled that it's out there and we can use it now. I've been
finally a mobile app. Been waiting for a year.
I know.
Well, we talked to Vib about it. it probably was like a year ago now. Like it feels like forever ago that we talked to Vib on our show, and he brought up that they were making a mobile app, that it was going to be sort of an in-app wallet so that you don't have to do, it probably wasn't a full year ago, but an in-app wallet so that you don't have to worry about like signing transactions outside of the platform, that kind of thing. It has changed the DRiP experience for me just in the last month since I started using it, because I just forgot to use it when it was web. But now that it's on my phone, it's a much more like it. I'm not going to say daily for me, but definitely a couple times a week, I remember to jump in there, claim some droplets, claim some NFTs. Like it is a much better experience for me. And I can only imagine that is the same for other users.
Yeah. We've gotten that feedback for sure. And even on our team, Sean, our rockstar web developer, you guys have the update where we have the secure stack, right? Where it's like the Tinder UI. Have you seen that?
Oh, I might not have updated that yet. I need to do that. I'll jump into test flight and make sure I get the update.
Make sure you got that. Yeah. So, that was a big,
right now as we're talking.
What's that?
I'm going to do it right now as we're talking.
Do it right now. Yes.
Install updating apps live. Let's go.
Yeah, that's great. And then it'll crash right away when you open it up. That'll be
we'll submit a bug report.
Yeah. Please share the crash.
0.3.2 build 27.
Yes. That's what it should be. So it was funny because Sean, they implemented that on web, and that really helped just kind of drive engagement for securing and people interacting with their drops. And Sean was like, you need to get that on the mobile app. So he's like, if you implement this, I will start using the mobile app probably more than anything else. And so I'm like, well, that's why I have to do it. And now he is. So
nice. That's awesome. And by the way, me saying that I love the mobile app is not meant to be a knock on the web app. Like it is a great web app. It's just the fact that you have to go into a browser.
I feel like my this is me saying this. No one else on DRiP has said this, but I feel like it's one of those things where at one point Facebook, I don't remember exactly how Zuckerberg said it, but he's like Facebook is a mobile company. And this was in 2014. And everyone was kind of like, are you sure? And now, of course, Facebook has a web app, but it's the predominant way everyone accesses anything that Meta, creates is via mobile. And so I'm kind of I have the same perspective. I'm I feel like DRiP is a mobile company. We just kind of haven't, I'm kind of trying to live in a reality that's maybe a year or two out. The web app will never go away. And I feel especially given our connection to Web3, I don't we're always going to have the connection to Web3. We're always going to be, Viv is always going to be thinking in those regards. What the web app offers is that quick iteration, right? And we can get so much good data so quickly with it. And so I feel going forward, at least in the near term and perhaps long term, that's really the perspective. They can try things on web, and then they eventually make the whole XP thing, right? We didn't know if that would be a success. Yeah, that's a wild success. So
that's a super interesting point about. I think iterating on a product in general. I think for the developers and for the product folks and the builders who are listening, I do think there are differences between a web and mobile platform. And you just brought up a really important one, which is it's really easy to bootstrap a web app, right? It's really easy to iterate on a web app. It
basically doesn't get easier than iterating on a web app.
No.
Push it live and it's in the hands of your users right away.
Whereas, you've got to go through some kind of review process with a mobile app. It's gotten so much better over the years. Once upon a time, we'd wait 2 weeks for an app store review for an iOS app. And now it's rarely over a day.
Oh, is it really? Okay, that's really good. So I haven't had to do that.
I need a caveat that's non-crypto app reviews, right? You're still going to get into some back and forth on that. But once you've gotten the initial approval, updates tend to be very, very quick, right? Like the App Store reviews tend to be very quick on updates because you're just improving it and they'll check it out real fast and move along. Apple did take that feedback to heart almost a decade ago now, 6-7 years ago.
Honestly, it's those old horror stories that like ring in my head, like people telling me like, oh yeah, we're pushing an update and it's going to take 2 weeks. And
the last time I sort of had that experience, I was working for a company called Exact where we did insurance. We had software for property insurance claim adjusters. So like the adjusters who would go out to the site and look at all the damage to property, they'd be like putting it in there. In fact, anyone listening, if they've ever gotten some kind of like damage report from insurance, it's probably using that app. But yeah, reviews would take 1.5 to 2 weeks. Larger companies like Exactware would have like a contact at Apple where they'd sometimes be able to rush things if it was an emergency. But your standard reviews took a while. Apple definitely added to that team, and there are a lot more reviewers now, and they can get through stuff a lot quicker. That none of that negates the fact that if you're doing something that is sort of on the fringe of what App Store policy allows, you might end up in some back and forth.
Anything crypto. Sorry, I had to cough.
Yeah, we don't even need to be we don't even need to be discreet about that. Like anything blockchain related, it is there's a likelihood it's going to get tied up in app review, and that sucks. But it's the world we live in, and so it's like you can always talk to folks like Dialect and others who have done blockchain related apps and sort of figure out how they've navigated those waters.
Mm-hmm.
Hey there, it's Nick. Quick intermission on the episode. If you're enjoying this episode, drop us a review in whatever podcast app you're already listening to, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. It would really, really help us out. We're trying to grow the show, trying to spread the good word of Solana and all the cool things and builders that are here in the ecosystem. And speaking of YouTube, if you're watching on YouTube, we publish all of our episodes there. Don't forget to subscribe. It really helps us out too. And let's go ahead and get back to the episode.
Yeah, I definitely want to hit up like ecosystem teams like when we really get there. But generally speaking, like the feedback I have been hearing is like people are generally more positive on like that initial review. They say like Popset, for example. I talked with the guys at Popset, and they're like a new social. They're actually kind of similar to DRiP. But they had a generally decent experience, and it's actually kind of surprising to me some of the apps that are getting in, and very exciting, like Jupiter, right? And then Bags is out, and they're like doing really well. So it's like this gives me a lot of hope. But it's like generally, but like to the general point of like iterating quickly. Again, we can iterate quickly on the web, but I do feel like we have yet to explore on mobile, and I hope we will. I will push for it. There are a lot of ways that we can get good data on mobile, and like A/B testing is a really good way to try things out on mobile, right?
And iOS Test Flight allows you to iterate relatively quickly. The biggest problem is you don't have control over when people update. Even the beginning of this conversation, where you're like, "Are you on this version?" And I'm like, "I don't think I am. I must not have automatic updates turned on," and I'll go look into that after this call. But you don't know who's got automatic updates turned on. Even if they do have them turned on, when it gets updated is not directly in your control. Versus, when I push code on a web app and have some continuous deployment set up, I know that within 3 to 5 minutes, anyone loading that site is seeing the newest thing. The end.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I definitely want to convert our test flight to become kind of like the inner circle of like beta testers, and I think we can really play that up once the app goes live. It's like, hey, if you want to be on the bleeding edge of what's going on DRiP, stay on the test flight, and maybe we create like a new group and a new invite. And then people can do that. And then, we can use that as our sort of, testing ground and catching crashes and stuff like that.
User feedback galore.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
I want to shift gears for what we're talking about a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm super curious to get your perspective, Andrew, of Solana focused mobile development. Like, you have an interesting background coming from Solana mobile related things. If you could talk to that, and then sort of how you think about mobile development specifically in the blockchain space. Like, we've already alluded to it a couple times. There's all these sort of issues that traditional mobile developers don't really have these necessarily concerns or whatever. And then as soon as you put this Web3 layer of blockchain anything, there's all these complexities that come into the app. I would love to hear your thoughts on all that.
Yeah. So I can say things now that I couldn't say before, so that's exciting. I don't know. It's, first of all, just like in general, Solana is like the only place where mobile is like a part of the conversation, like a significant part of the conversation, and like a proactive part of the conversation. Obviously, what Solana Mobile is doing and continuing to do, totally is going on. All the podcasts,
snazzy phones here. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. I have my. This is. I still have. This is my old Saga that was my daily. Oh, hey, look. There's the. Yeah, I use it. Oh my
James,
God.
oh my goodness.
They're literally just sitting on my desk.
Do you have the box? Are we flexing right now? Check it out.
I do have some boxes up here. Yeah.
Good. Okay. You guys,
so I've got this Saga box. I've got this one back here. That's my DVT right there too.
Oh, you guys, you are all over it. Okay.
Someday this will be worth millions.
Yes. That's what we're all hoping. We all stare at them like every day, like I'm saving that for later.
It's not that I haven't cleaned my desk in a while.
Definitely.
Same.
Yeah. I like you like dust the desk and like things move around and you're like, I could move that.
A new Saga pops out from some crevice. We're like, where'd that one come from?
Exactly.
I sometimes forget to like give audio cues for people who are listening audio only. I was holding up like three Sagas at once, guys. Just for anyone confused about the last minute. It's I have an interesting. I actually don't know how I feel about Solana Mobile, the hardware side of things, right? Like that, it feels like an interesting play to me, and I sort of go back and forth on like whether I feel that will be successful. Regardless of that, though, I do think it will help make Solana as a whole successful because of the focus on mobile. I do think that anything that is sort of consumer facing in modern times has to be mobile first. And so the fact that Solana is the only place where that's in the conversation just automatically is bullish for me.
But you're seeing, what's interesting is you're seeing all the big projects and the high quality projects, which is like so many on Solana. They're living in the not Solana Mobile reality, right? Like they're skipping over Solana Mobile. The discourse is skipping over Solana Mobile and going straight to the app stores, right? Because that's what you have to do. And so like Solana Mobile almost has to like break into its own ecosystem because like I think about like Photo Finish and, like all these like bags, again, they're all going on the main app stores. But, I do think that like once the Seeker is out, with a cohort of 150K users, like that,
who are all like diehard
Solana
users,
right. And like again, like what I was thinking about today with, I sure hope I don't think they've done the specs, but like I hope they put like a lot of storage on the Seeker, like because I know there are people who bought like 10 of them and stuff like that, but like even with like that. All the earning opportunities with like the Seeker, like if even those people that bought 10 Seekers, put them on the Genesis Go network and they're like revenue generating, right? Like that's really exciting. And I definitely think about that cohort as like beta testers, right? Like probably the equivalent, like I would probably put bleeding edge builds of DRiP because the UX can suck and there can be bugs because, Web3 users are used to that.
But they're also usually like inherently like more advanced users, especially for like anything crypto.
Yes.
Like
you can
if a person has dedicated to like getting a Solana phone with the Solana App Store, you already have like your niche level of marketing sort of niche down.
Yeah.
James, you basic.
Hey, I ordered my Seeker.
I ordered mine at Breakpoint. Actually, I was behind stage. I was backstage with Emmett, like right after he went on. I was like, I guess I'll order my Seeker finally.
But here's my criticism. My criticism is that I don't think Solana Mobile is doing enough. First of all, they're not active enough on Twitter, and I'm like, I literally said that on Twitter, and like Anatoly retweeted it. This was like maybe 2 months ago. It was before Breakpoint. And it's like, they need to be like, they got a chance they didn't deserve. Okay. Like Solana Mobile was going to shut down. Right?
You talking about the bonk drop?
Yeah. They don't
bonk
deserve
saved mobile.
Bonk saved Solana Mobile.
Yeah. 100%. And so the two things I think they need to do differently are they need to be way more active on Twitter. They need to just be sort of vibing on the socials. But I think they should be just talking more, like courting more developers, talking with developers, talking with teams, like just boosting that conversation. Like Mike is their DevRel, and he's awesome, but I never hear from him on socials or anything. It's like the most recent anything mobile that I saw was Brianna, who's one of the fellow DevRels. She did like a mobile app, and it's like, okay, this is good. This is what we should be doing, right? Like stuff like this. And so I suppose maybe they're trying to leave that up to Foundation to do it, but they are a company that's trying to sell phones and trying to boost the developer ecosystem. And like, there's quite a good precedent for for-profit companies having DevRels and promoting development for that platform, namely Google, right? Like Google has a whole army of DevRels, and it's a for-profit, you know what I mean? So those are my criticisms. Like I would like to see them force themselves into the conversation and be promoting that mobile development, because again, what you're seeing happening is you're seeing all these, high quality teams just sort of even view Solana Mobile as an afterthought. And I would say to some extent, even we do at DRiP, right? Like, especially now, like, because, there's no users of the Saga, actual users. So yeah, like I think there's a lot more opportunity. So that's the first part of the conversation. That's kind of like the general ecosystem. But now we can get into like the actual Web3, like details. And, I think what you were kind of alluding to, Nick, is, there's like, when you're doing Web3 development, you're communicating with, infrastructure that you don't normally have to communicate with, namely RPCs, signing transactions, and stuff like that. And, the thing about mobile development is you have to, particularly on Android, like this was just drilled into my head, like from a young age in development. And I think this is even largely true on iPhone, because people can jailbreak, although it's getting hard, it's probably harder, but you just have to view the mobile device as a complete, like you just assume the device is rooted and that the user has access to everything, right? And that your app binary can be downloaded, pulled apart. Especially on Android, there's like multiple mirror sites. So like every APK, which is it's the binary that Android apps create, or that you build when you create an Android app. It's called an APK. You can go, there's like APK Mirror, there's all these other sites, and apps that are on and signed by Google Play end up on APK Mirror and stuff like that. I have used APK Mirror recently because I couldn't wait for the new Pokemon trading card game. So I got that on my phone by using APK Mirror. And it's like, it's one of the kind of powerful things about Android, but it's also scary for Android development. So it's like any secret that you put into your Android app can leak. So like if you are connecting to an RPC, like Helios or any of the big RPCs, and you've got like your RPC key in there, or if heaven forbid, you just
hopefully no actual secrets. Like an RPC URL is it's like a opaque secret in a way where it's like usually it's a unique thing and that's like tied to your account, so someone could rack up your bill, use your RPC service. But yeah, a mobile app, just you're putting your code on someone else's device. Yeah. It's not being loaded directly from a server, and they're only getting the client side code. So it's mobile apps, like you are putting client side code on a user's device. Don't trust it. by default.
Don't trust it. Yep. Assume somebody is going to find that secret that you have in there. Like never, ever have any private key like from an account that you control in that APK, right?
Yep.
And so, like honestly, like the best way to obscure anything, on a mobile app binary is to put it behind an API proxy on your server. So it's like I sort of had this realization. I'm like maybe I don't know a year ago or something. I'm like it kind of sucks, but like we can do all these like proof of concept apps, right? And like it's really cool to like just be able to build a mobile app that quickly talks to like this Solana RPC and like signs a transaction and does these things on chain. And that's really exciting. But it's like, if you want to build anything that scales or anything that goes to consumers, you have to build an API. You have to build a backend because that's how you're going to protect your secrets. And you can do things like OAuth, and like, even just asking users to sign in just so you can do OAuth, right? Like sign in with Google or sign in with passkeys or whatever. And that way, you can proxy all of your, your calls and stuff like that. You could even like, you can co-sign transactions and have them ultimately executed on the back end, things like this. Like that's kind of what you have to do. And it sucks because like as a mobile developer, you want to just be like, I'm just going to build my mobile app and like just release it, but it's just not the reality that we live in. And so it's, I guess it's the same for like an exe that you would install on your desktop. Just people aren't doing that, right? Like,
that's not super standard these days.
No.
Well, for what it's worth, like I got into web development because of what you're describing. Because it's like, I can't actually make apps on my own without making a backend. So I guess I should figure out Node.js, and then you do Node.js, and you're like, I could like, now that I know some TypeScript, I could probably figure out how to throw together like a quick React front end, and then so then you like start throwing together front ends, and then it's like,
and then you're stuck in the React ecosystem forever.
Suddenly you're a web dev.
I'm not. I still do not consider myself a web developer, but definitely like have done. I've probably done twice as much web development the last 4 years as mobile development, and somehow I'm still an iOS developer. So.
Yeah. No, I'm with you, and like. I'm the same. I don't consider myself a web dev, but then like the way that I've implemented large quantities of the DRiP app is literally just porting the web code. And like, I would ask them, I'm like, hey guys, like, how do I do this on the API? And they're like, here's the TypeScript code. Go figure it out. It's like, okay, well, I guess I have to do that. And
I will say it's wildly convenient. Like I hate JavaScript. I'm just going to come out and say it. Most of us, I think, agree, but it's wildly convenient to have like a common language that almost everybody knows because of what you just said. It's like, let me just throw together a sample implementation in a language that virtually everyone knows, and then you can go rewrite it in whatever you're using.
Yep.
Yeah, I think when we had Xiong from Jupiter on many episodes ago, sometime earlier this year, and he basically said like Jupiter does that intentionally. They will prototype in JavaScript or Python. They'll get like a fully working version because everyone can read Python and JavaScript. And then once they like figure out their algorithm or like whatever it is they're trying to figure out, then they'll make it performant in something like Rust and like deploy it. It makes so much sense.
Yeah. It's hard. JavaScript is that. It's like the programming language nobody likes, but nobody can avoid.
Wild.
I don't hate it. It's fine.
It's fine, except all the random ass edge cases that make no sense.
Yeah, what could go wrong?
I'm just glad we have TypeScript. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, yeah, no, for sure. TypeScript is better than no types in my opinion, but it's still just bolting on types onto an untyped language is not the same thing as having a strong language.
Our web app can get away with like so much. Like I'm like, well, what about like how are you guys handling like because we have a lot of like real-time updates because we use like WebSockets and stuff. And there's just you have so many resources on the desktop and like you just don't have to think about things. I have to think about like memory consumption and making sure app doesn't eat up too much stuff. Although right now the iOS app for DRiP is like will overheat sometimes, so I'm not gotta fix that. Like somebody did like my DRiP app gets hot, and I was like, oh, sheesh.
Oh damn! What is so we said we were going to talk a little bit about the cross platform.
Yes.
stuff. I am curious. Like, what are you using for DRiP? Why did you go that route? Let's have that conversation.
Let's get into it.
It's obviously React Native. Andrew's real big on it.
Yeah, if anyone has ever interacted with me with respect to mobile development on socials, you will know I do not like React Native. The reason I do not like React Native is predominantly because of its performance. To this day, for the most part, when I encounter a React Native app, I can tell it's a React Native app. And that is because the way React Native app works is you write all your code in this JavaScript or TypeScript programming language, and then they bundle basically a JavaScript runtime in the mobile app, and then that runs it. And so there's lots of weird tricks they have to play to make it work, and it ends up causing it to perform weird.
It's like a second execution layer,
yeah,
right? Like there's already code executing at the base layer,
the original layer 2,
additional runtime on top of it to run.
React Native is the original layer 2. It all makes sense now.
Makes sense.
I'm gonna use that. We're gonna go with that.
We should get T-shirts. I'm Creative Commons. It's all good.
Yeah, that is amazing. Yeah. So I will say in recent years, and they've made a lot of moves to like make React Native more performant. And like there are like every now and then I'll encounter an app that's React Native, and it's like, oh wow, I kind of couldn't tell. And that's really good. But I think, also the risk with React Native is what you end up with is people come into it with like kind of web assumptions, like you develop it like you would develop a website and don't think about the fact that it's like it is a mobile experience. Like a really good example is a very simple thing is like screen transitions, for example, right? So like on a web page, when you click a link, it just kind of does this hard refresh that goes blank for a second and then it just shows. But generally speaking, on mobile, there's this assumption that it's all fluid and connected. So, like when you click on anything clickable, you see this transition between where you are and where you get to. And there's a lot of different techniques that they'll use. Like sometimes the screen just slides, sometimes a sheet pops up, sometimes like the image kind of like on Twitter, if you click on an image, it zooms up and then fills the screen. Like these are just nice little touches that make life feel nice on mobile devices. And like if you're thinking like a web developer, you wouldn't do that. But that's not a fault of React Native. That's just a risk that comes with it. So
yeah, it's like 80% of the problems of cross-platform, in my opinion, are just not understanding the UX differences. And look, depending on where you're working, that could be the fault of your UX designer. But I'd say most places, the dev has a lot of creative liberty with those kinds of things because it is hard to design literally every single animation, every single thing, and be like, here, developer, just implement all of these things. I know at Elements, our front end guy, Leo, he implements all of the lovely things in our app. He just comes up with them as he's doing it. And so we design with that in mind, where it's like, we'll come up with high level designs and then be like, you are great at making things nice. So like figure out how to make it nice. And if your dev is thinking about this from a web perspective, the mobile app isn't going to be nice because there are different conventions.
Yeah, very different conventions. Yeah. Yeah. So when I started at DRiP, I was the only mobile developer and I was tasked with building 2 apps. And I knew I didn't want to do React Native, but there was this. So the other kind of major cross-platform technology is Flutter, but that Flutter is very similar to React Native in that you write it in a weird, you like a JavaScripty language, and then it's like a runtime thing. But you get more of sort of like a native binary with Flutter, and it is ostensibly more performant, although I don't really know, but like. I wanted to maybe like a last resort. But thankfully, JetBrains is the company that invented Kotlin. Kotlin has been the Android programming language for quite some time. And it's it's a Java JVM, which is a Java virtual machine. It's a Java can run any programming language. You kind of transpile, or not transpile, you literally compile any programming language to the Java bytecode. So Kotlin is one of them. Other ones are like Scala, Groovy, these are other ones. But Kotlin has taken over. It's just like a modern programming language. It's Swift and Kotlin are almost identical, share a lot of same syntax. But JetBrains, when they created Kotlin, they started investing in what they called Kotlin multi-platform. And that was making Kotlin compile and run as native binaries on every destination platform. So desktop, Android, iOS. Yeah. And so from the get-go, that was the goal. The goal was when you compile Kotlin, you will write Kotlin code and it will compile a native binary for every platform. And so their first foray into that was just sort of doing raw logic. So like there was a move with like Kotlin multi-platform to say like, okay, well, write your business logic in Kotlin multi-platform and then bundle it with your iOS app, and you can write your native UIs in Swift UI or UI Kit or whatever. But it allows you to, and it's very performant because it's a native binary. And then, but you can write it once and run it everywhere. And there's a lot of benefit in that. So you started to see that, but then they took it a step further. And so, Jetpack Compose is Android's, modern UI framework, just like Swift UI, just like React. All the modern UI frameworks are all the same in that they're these reactive, systems where, the render trees and all that sort of thing. If you can literally like map like React conventions to Swift UI conventions to Jetpack Compose. They're all named different things, but they're all the same concepts. And so what they did is they made Jetpack Compose this is JetBrains, and made Jetpack Compose a cross-platform API as well. So Jetpack Compose on Android under the hood uses the Skia compositing library. It's a very well-known, popular 2D compositing framework that's GPU based, and they literally ported Skia to iOS. And so you write Jetpack Compose in Kotlin on one platform, and then when you compile that native binary to iOS, it then runs that UI framework on iOS. And so you get a native binary for your business logic, and you get a very, very high performant UI framework for your iOS app. And so when I started at DRiP, Compose multi-platform was in alpha, and it was like, wow. So what you get with Compose, Kotlin and Compose multi-platform is you're writing Kotlin, you're writing your UIs, you're writing your business logic. And on Android, you get a 100% native Android app. It's just like any other Android app that you normally use. On iOS, you get a compiled binary that is a native binary, and that's very, very performant, but it is not using all of the iOS APIs, right? And so the perspective that I had is I'm like, I'm going to start this project with Kotlin and Compose multi-platform, and we're going to see how it does on iOS. We'll use it for Android because it'll be the same thing, but it'll get me a long way. It'll get me a very, 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 very far in terms of implementing features for both platforms. But if it sucks on iOS, we will start by rewriting the UIs in Swift UI, because that's the best way to sort of get like the iOS native feel, is to like have the screens be Swift UI and then again have your business logic be, because like the vast majority of the work that I do, the vast majority of the work that I do on the DRiP app is like sort of taking the UIs from designs and then implementing them as screens and stuff like that. The business logic is pretty straightforward.
And the Compose UI stuff has worked out?
Well, so that's the thing. It's actually very performant on iOS.
I was just, as you're talking, I was just tapping through the app, and yes, incredibly snappy. Like none of my worries here stem from performance, right? Like any lag or whatever is the normal, like this is loading, but the screen itself pops up instantly. It's, it's incredibly performant. So you haven't felt like there's any issues there in sort of adapting iOS conventions from a UI UX perspective?
Well, no. I mean, like for me, the big criteria was making Viv happy, because he's very picky. And it's like, if he,
as a founder should be.
Yes. And he has a high benchmark, that they have very high standards. And if he was happy, I felt like we're like 90% of the way there. But there are some things that that we do kind of lose. Like one big thing is like gesture-based navigation. A lot of iOS apps have that, where like you can swipe to like navigate back, and like you can see like the screen and stuff like that. I don't get that for free, right? Like you get that for free, I think, with Swift UI. So like we are missing some of the iOS convention.
Get that for free with Swift UI originally. Like Swift UI, when it first came out in 2019, I think 2020, even through 2021, 2022, it was still pretty infantile. And I would, me and my iOS developer buddies are often butting around the edges. I haven't used it as much in the last couple of years, so I can't speak to it as much now. I haven't heard as many complaints, so I think it's matured a lot more. But even so, I think that there are, UIKit, which is the framework prior to Swift UI, has been around since virtually, maybe before iOS, actually. It's very mature. There's a lot.
It might have been the UI framework that Mac OS apps used, I think.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think it was there before even, because UIKit, you use UIKit even when you're writing in Objective-C, which is the language before Swift. Swift came out in, 2012, 2013.
I got into Android development because I didn't want to learn Objective-C. It's basically
nice. I was fortunate or unfortunate enough that like Swift was basically my first programming language. And it's ruined me for most programming languages, if I'm being honest, because it's lovely. I love Swift. And to your point, Kotlin is very similar to Swift. Like I've never used this Kotlin multi-platform tool, but it sounds like I would make a similar decision to you, where it's like, oh, let's use that for virtually all the same reasons, but one of them would be it's similar to Swift. That's like my native language, right? Even if I go a year without writing Swift, I would still come back to it, and it would still feel like, this is easier than anything else because it's the first thing I knew, The app, yeah. Anyway, to the sort of main point, the app is incredibly performant. I think it's phenomenal what you've done, and it sounds like your approach is incredibly pragmatic, where it's like, look, if we have to, we'll rewrite the UI layer and maintain a business logic layer, which makes tons of sense. I mentioned Exactware earlier. That was cross-platform using Xamarin.
Okay, yeah.
We did not write. We wrote the UI in Xamarin, but we had two teams, one working on the iOS UI, one working on the Android UI. And that way we could share the business logic, which there actually made a ton of sense, because there were legal repercussions if the calculations in the business logic differed between platforms on an insurance app, right? So it made just a ton of sense to have a shared logic layer in C# that you could use on the web, that you could use on desktop, that you could use on all the mobile platforms. I will say I hated it at times.
C# was actually my first programming language. So
no, I don't mind the C# language. I just meant trying to get things to play nice in iOS sometimes was a struggle. C# is great. I don't like it as much as Swift,
Yeah.
but it's great.
Listen, all the programming languages copied C#. Like literally all the major features that you know and love in Swift were in C# probably 8 years earlier.
Some version of it. Many of them I think were improved upon, but yes, right. Like I agree with that.
Basically, my little phrase is that C# got so good and they sort of innovated as much as they needed to there that they had to go sick the founder and have him save JavaScript, because Andres Hellberg is the guy who invented TypeScript. So he was the guy that created C#, and then they're like, go fix JavaScript, and he did.
I did not know that. This is a piece of history.
There is your tidbit for the day. Yes, Anders Hellberg was at Microsoft. I think he is still at Microsoft, and he created C# and he created TypeScript. So there you go.
Nice.
That's a cool fact.
That's cool.
Yeah. All right, we're getting close to the end of the episode and the time here. I want to do a quick rapid fire. One question, Andrew.
Okay.
What would you say is your top maybe 3 resources that you would tell mobile developers or wannabe mobile developers who want to check out Kotlin and specifically for Solana development?
The Android docs are incredible. Like the Google, it's like developer.android.com. And they have like loads of pages. They have these like code labs where they like walk you through building an app and doing all sorts of things in it. And I would say anybody who wants to get into like, actual native mobile development, even for Solana, should just start by building non-Solana apps, because all the things that you're going to need to know, like for me, especially, like I do very little with like the Solana. I don't do anything with the Solana network. I just build normal mobile apps that talk to APIs. As we were talking about, if you end up obscuring most of your stuff on the back end, that's what you're going to be doing anyway. So the type of things that you're going to eventually need to learn and know is just standard, what you would call standard mobile development. So follow the developer docs.
Can I pause on that real fast?
Yeah.
With the exception of maybe signing some transactions.
Yeah. Okay. But I was going to get there because then after you've sort of done the normal stuff, then go read the Solana mobile docs and see what they've got. And suddenly it'll all make sense, they have a lot of React Native documentation, but they have some mobile documentation. So there's that. Honestly, Claude, man, Claude is going to be an amazing resource for like what I tell people to do with the AI, the LLMs is if they're learning, I say, ask it to devise a lesson plan for you of learning a programming language. I did that with ChatGPT and Rust back when I think it was when I was between jobs, but I don't have a lot of reason to do Rust, but I did. And I was just curious, like have it and it's like, it's just amazing because they will come up with a lesson plan and you have a interactive teacher. So no, if you had asked me this question a year ago, AI would not have been a major resource. Right. But it is. And now, it's just one of the things that will help you, and asking it to, I would say leveraging it to explain things to you rather than just write code for you is the way to go.
Rather than just trying to copy pasta some code it gives you. You don't learn anything.
Honestly, like finding sample apps and like trying to run them and trying to understand them, is a really good way to learn. And again, now with AI, you can put the code in and say, explain this to me, right? Like, what is this doing? And so like, I guess that's what I would say. And then get involved on social media, right? Like I always come on these podcasts and say, contact me. I want to help people. There's developer communities out there, even Stack Overflow, although that's less so in recent times. But yeah, those are.
I have one follow-up sort of about like the Solana integration piece. Obviously, lovely to throw most of that in the back end so that the mobile dev doesn't have to worry about it too much. How much of that interaction with the back end do you find, it's helpful for you to know what's happening under the hood? So like understand the Solana side of it?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like I would, again, like I think for prototyping, you should do everything in the mobile app, right? Like sign the transactions, build the transactions, hit the RPC directly,
just maybe don't deploy that.
Don't ship that to production.
Don't ship that to production. Don't send that to Apple for review.
Got Got it.
But because they probably won't review it also, by the way, if you're doing like on iOS, you'd have to do like deep linking into the wallet or something. They probably won't review it because I actually tried submitting the beta for DRiP. We had a whitelist and you had to like go in Phantom, and I submitted. I'm like, here's the steps to get on the whitelist. And they're like, no.
They're like, we don't
right away.
No. That's funny. Are there any like transactions signed in the DRiP app as it stands?
No, we don't ask the user to sign any transactions on the mobile side. Okay. And I don't think we will.
Got it.
All right, what's your next rapid fire question? Or is that the only one?
That was it. That was the one. Okay. I guess James, you got any last minute things you wanna say or ask?
I always ask guests at the end if there's anything they want to shill that they haven't had the opportunity to talk about, and anything you want to say to the listeners before we wrap.
I want to say download the DRiP mobile app, but you have to have an account first. So just go to DRiP, start interacting with DRiP. And honestly, I think at this point, what I think would be beneficial for us, and probably most of the people listening to this podcast have touched DRiP at one time or another, but a recurring theme, and this is not a problem for, no one should feel bad about saying this. Like, people will routinely tell me like this is like the worst shill on the face of the planet, by the way. But it's going somewhere. People will say like, I stopped using DRiP. Like, they'll be like, I logged in, it was fun, and I kind of don't use it anymore. I check in once a week or whatever. And no one should feel bad about that, because it's on us to figure out something that makes you want to come back, right? That is what we have to figure out. And I think the mobile app can help with that. Like, we can do push notifications. We can put it in front of you, right? Like, the icon can be there, but if there's nothing compelling to get you to come back, then you shouldn't come back. And so what I'm getting at is like getting feedback from people. Like, what would you want it to be? What would bring you back, right? Like, that's what I want to know. That's what we want to know. And I think that's what we need to figure out. So that's the shill. Give us feedback.
Honestly, I love the mobile app and give us
feedback. Yeah.
I love pretty good. Shill. I love it.
Yeah. I love it. It's like such a developer builder shill where it's like, give me feedback so that I can build something better, rather than kind of like the typical marketing shill where where it's like hype, right? I appreciate that.
I got to like shill stuff. Like, I would like do like spaces and podcasts at Solana Mobile, and I got to shill stuff there. Now at DRiP, I get to be like, it sucks right now. The app crashes all the time. Help us make it better.
doesn't crash on me all that often.
Good.
My experience is relatively smooth for what it's worth. But I will send any feedback I have your way, and anyone listening, I encourage you to do the same. This was awesome. This was lots of fun. A far more like technical episode than I think we've had in a minute, and I think some of our listeners really appreciate that. I certainly have had a ton of fun. So
this has been great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. See the glisten in James's eye talking about mobile development.
There's a tear dripping down my face.
Dripping down? Damn, throwback.
Whoa! Nice
crossover.
But no, there are few and far between iOS like devs in the ecosystem. I don't know how I hadn't found you prior. Like, I would like look for like the iOS devs. Like, I found Tej, right?
It's like, I don't really do much iOS development in the Solana ecosystem, right? So it's like I don't do much. If I'm being completely honest, I don't do a whole lot of development period right now. I'm a lot more kind of product and strategy focused, which is a little bit sad. I do so like my main job at Elements is to head up product, and so I would say most of the engineering that I do is like financial engineering. We're trying to build out financial structures that we can then put into place on the end.
Can't build that in Swift though.
Things. Yeah, not doing that in Swift. I do still have a couple of like side iOS clients that I do work for every once in a while, but it's very minimal, a couple hours a month to sort of like fix a bug here and there. So I still jump into Xcode periodically. And then I obviously, in working with Elias, our CTO at Elements, I do a lot of do a fair amount of like prototyping of things for him, where it's like I'll think through the product in my mind, and then rather than have him guess what I'm trying to get at, I'll sort of prototype a thing where it's very not production ready, but it's enough for him to be like, oh yeah, I know what you're trying to do here. And then he can go make it production quality. But that's pretty much the extent of my software development these days. That could, we could circle back at some point for sure. But, the last couple of years have been kind of that.
Okay, you just got to rope in more iOS developers, because
I would love to.
Severely lacks those.
Yeah. I would love more people doing iOS stuff in the Solana ecosystem. I do think mobile first is the way to go. I'm stoked to see sort of the future. I often wish I had a crystal ball and could just look, 5 years ahead and see like, what does it look like? What have we accomplished? But no, we'll just take it one day at a time.
That's right.
I think that crystal ball is just going to show you mobile. I think
that's right. Just mobile. We need a DRiP icon.
Well, sweet. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us. This was awesome.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure. Let's do it again sometime.
Yeah.
And to the listeners, thanks for being here, and we'll see y'all next time.
Bye-bye. All right. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Solfate podcast. I hope you liked it. I know we did. We always have a blast recording with our amazing guests. If you've got a moment, please leave us a review in your podcast app or subscribe on YouTube. And I guess it's time to get some more coffee and get back to work.